Hi there, this is Andy Stark. I'm the president of Genmar International, and I want to thank you for taking the time to view this video. Today I want to go over just a quick high-level overview of VisualDLP, our cloud-based lab management software. I've logged into the order management module right now, so we're going to start there. And as you can see on the dashboard here, we have an overview of what's going on in the lab. Here we've got units in today, invoices today, remakes. If I look down a little further, I have units in by department, sales by department, any account notes that have been entered in the system, all date time stamped, and who by whom entered them. If I scroll down further, we've got order shipping today. That's based on the ship date of the case. Open pickup requests. So if you're picking up cases from your accounts, you can schedule pickups, and those pickups can actually be, those requests can actually be texted or emailed to your delivery drivers. So that's a nice feature to alert them when a new pickup has come in. And then late orders. Late orders don't necessarily mean late to the doctor, but late in production. So as we get into scheduling, you'll see we can set up milestones and steps in production, and then if something is late, it'll show up in that late order queue. Further down, we've got the order count in the last 90 days and then active accounts per day, just to give you a high-level view of the number of cases coming in and how many active accounts you're working with each day. All right, one nice thing about this dashboard is it is filtered. You can come in and filter by account name. So if you want to look at all this information based on one specific account, you can type that account name and filter it. And you can also change the date range. We can go from a day, week, month, or year. For both of, or actually all of these widgets here, we can look at that by invoices, by remakes, by month, day, year. All right, so that's our dashboard. A couple other things I want to point out. Up in the upper right hand corner, we've got a calendar feature. This calendar is a place to add items that you want to be reminded of. For instance, if you want to remember to call a doctor next week about a case, you can add that into the calendar. You would do that by going to the doctor's record. So I'll search, well, I can just pop up one of these doctors here, Dr. Camerati, for instance. If I go to events, I can click add an event, put the event detail. I can specify whether it's a recurring event or not. So maybe you want to call the doctor every week. You could set up a recurring event. And then have an alert set up. So who should be alerted when this event is due? So you could be texted or emailed that the event is ready or is due that day. Now there are some automated events whenever you have a new doctor. So let's come over here to the doctor's record. You have some flags here. Is a prospect, is at risk, is a VIP, is new doctor. So if it's a new doctor, when you enter a case for that doctor and invoice it, it's going to automatically create an event 7 days later that will remind you to call that account, call that doctor and say, hey, how'd that first case go with us? We'd like to get some feedback on it. It'll also create an event on the 10th case. So when the 10th case for the new doctor is invoiced, then it will also drop that event on the calendar for 7 days later, and you can be reminded to call them and ask them how it went. All right, further over here we've got an add button. This is where you would schedule pickups. So if I click schedule pickup, I can do that from anywhere in the system because we know you guys get those calls all day long. You can enter the account information, requested pickup date, morning, AM, PM, and then put some instructions in. And this can also be, this is what is sent to the delivery driver. This information with the instruction will actually be texted or emailed. We also have account notes you can add. So if you want to add a quick account note, you can type that in. You can select the account and then type the note in, and that will get saved with the account. Now you might notice that I've been talking about accounts and doctors. That's an important distinction I want to point out. Doctors, in our view, are people who can send you cases, who can have preferences, and they can have these relationships with your lab. An account is sort of a higher level. It's more of the financial entity that collects the accounts receivable, right? So it's who owes you the money. Sometimes they may be the same. You may have a sole practice where Dr. Camerati has an office that she started, and so it would be, say, Camerati Dentistry would be the account. Dr. Camerati is the person. So we do that because you may have several doctors who bill into one account. You may have a doctor who works with several accounts. So it kind of gives you some flexibility to determine how you want to structure your billing relationships. And I can probably demonstrate this by clicking on the billing accounts here. And you can see Dr. Camerati has both Camerati Dentistry and Brick Dentistry as accounts that she can bill into. So an important thing to remember is that the account is who receives the statement. The doctor just shows up on that statement. So if you had a group practice that had several doctors in the same group practice, they would all bill into the same account. All right, while we're on doctors, let's continue going over what we have here. We've got special pricing, so you can set up special pricing for each doctor. There is also special pricing for the entire account you could set up, but special pricing for the doctor gives you the ability to give them a discounted deal for a period of time, and when that so this overrides the default price list, I guess is what I'll say there. Moving on, we have work instructions. These are going to be work instructions for the activities or the products. So an activity is something that gets done in the laboratory, like milling, QC, scan, design. You can see those activities there. And then to the right over here, we have the instructions. We also have product work instructions. So whenever the product is on a case, that instruction will get pulled into the case, printed on the work ticket, made available for the technician to read through the technician interface. That's how you can set up these preferences. Now, one more preference we can set up is the default workflow. The default workflow can be set by product, and so what that allows you to do is say, this doctor always wants us to use this technique to produce this crown or this restoration. So that technique is embodied in a workflow, and that workflow can be defaulted for the doctor. So your data entry operators don't have to think about it. They can just enter the product for the doctor, and it'll select the appropriate workflow for them. All right, and finally here we have customer defined fields. I've got, let's say I've got a dental school that I want to start storing for each doctor. What's their favorite color, or what's their pet name, or how many operatories do they have? So we always have been asked, where can I store this information? Now you can create your own fields to store this. All right, so let's move on to the account now, since we've talked about that a little bit. So I'll go under Finance and Accounts, and here we'll see a list of accounts. Let's just pick Brick Dentistry. So I'll open that up. And again, the account is where all the information related to finance, settings around finance, like service charges, are they taxable, are they part of a corporate structure, what is their practice group name, all of that is listed here. And you can see I've got several shipping addresses, or I've got several addresses. One is a shipping address, one is the default. I can enter email addresses used for different reasons. I've got phone numbers, I've got a personal line, I've got for order inquiry. And then you can see the top right, we've got your account balance. Now if I clicked on financial, I'm going to see more information there. I'm going to see the current charges, the 30-day, and so on, and the aged ledger, essentially. And then I'll see all the transactions that occurred in the current month. I can expand that, so if I wanted to look at a larger range, I could say, let's look back, going into May and maybe June 4th, and or July 4th, and we'll run that, and now we'll see all the transactions that occurred there. Okay, now next to financial, we could also look at the current statement, and we can set up payment methods here. We have a credit card processing integration, so you can set up the card number that would be run whenever you post a payment, and that would be automatically processed and then posted against the outstanding balance. And we'll go over payment entry in just a moment here. Okay, account settings. We have some general settings here. The account is active, they're taxable, what price list are they on, what is the finance charge, do we apply a finance charge, what is the route they're on, salesperson, and report group. Report group is sort of a way to relate accounts that aren't really related in the real world. So for instance, you could have a report group that said, group all my institutions or all my hospitals or all my clinics together. Group, if you work with correctional institutions, group them all together. And then that's used as a grouping in the reporting, so you can see all of those accounts listed next to one another to get a comparison. We can also override the default invoice and statement that you have set up. So if you had an account that said, hey, I need a different format for my invoice or for my statement, you can customize that, or we can customize it for you, or you could do it. We actually have a report writer that you could use to do that, and then set that value up in the invoice and statement override. All right, further over here, we've got the doctors who are listed in this account. So as I mentioned earlier, you could have several doctors billing into one account. And here you see we have three. We have Dr. Camerati, Dr. Brick, and Dr. Odell. And then users for this account. And users are where we can set up access for the account to log in. We have a mobile app that we're releasing for Android and iOS. We currently have a web web interface for them to do this, but we feel like the mobile app will probably be easier for them to use and communicate with you. And again, as I mentioned, we have special pricing that you can set up at the account level. And customer-defined fields also exist at the account level. So if you wanted to set up say a blanket PO, what is the current PO number, or what is there's all sorts of uses that just you can use custom fields for, and this gives you a place to do that. All right, let's talk a little bit about products. Products are sort of the third building block that we have. We talked about doctors, now we have accounts, now we have products. So let's just take I'll just type ZIR, and I think we'll get some zirconia crowns pop up here. We do. So here we've got zirconia Imagine. The product name, we got away from IDs, numeric IDs, things like that. There seemed to be like a holdover from the bad old days of these character-based systems where you could only put numeric IDs in there. My feeling is if you're going to call it a zirconia Imagine crown, that's what you should train your data entry operators to use and enter. Now I realize that is a hard habit to break, so we did include an alpha code. So if you're transitioning from an older system that has IDs, we can place that ID in the alpha code, and it is searchable when you do data entry, when you do case entry. So you can look up by that code. So you've got a description, which would be printed on either your work tickets or other documents, your reports. And then you have an invoice description. So if you needed to change the way it appears on the invoice, you could do that. So down below we've got the product department that it belongs to, the type, where it's a crown and bridge. The web portal description shows up under the fixed categories. Unit value just gives you a way to weight this thing. So I guess the best example I could give is if you had a crown like a bridge and you sold it as a 1 unit, but it was really say 4 units in the bridge, you could use the unit value to say whenever I entered one of these in order entry, it's actually worth 4 for reporting purposes. That's really what that's about. Income account, what is the GL income account or the sales account that should be posted to? Inactive, if it's inactive, we can't select it any longer. Variably priced means that when the data entry operator enters the case, the price that comes off the price list could be overwritten before they invoice it. So that's useful if you have some things that the price fluctuates on and they want to change that. Discountable means you can apply a discount on the line item for this case and give it a percentage off based on a coupon or what have you. And can be rushed and shown on web portal, should be pretty explanatory. At the very bottom we've got an invoice note. This is a note you can add to the product that will print on the invoice. That's just a way to bring in information, maybe warranty information or point of origin, things like that. All right, to the right of that we have pricing. This gives us our pricing information. You can edit the price directly from this interface for each of them. Materials, you've got the material options for zirconia. Imagine this is where you can set up the materials that you could use, that you would use to construct this. You'll notice we have a supply chain icon down here. We're releasing our inventory module, which we call supply chain, this summer, and materials and supply chain will then be linked together. So the materials that you indicate are used in the zirconia's Imagine construction could be tagged to be removed out of inventory. So that way you know how much you have on hand, how much you've used. You can track the cost. That's really what this is about, is tracking the material cost each time you construct that product. Then of course we have the customer defined fields for products as well. So we really went crazy with the customer defined fields. We added them pretty much everywhere we think you would want to use them. Alright, so before we get into order entry, let's talk a little bit about scheduling and workflows. I mentioned that a little bit when we talked about preferences. Alright, so we start with the concept of an activity. And so these activities are the things that the technicians do in the laboratory. And you can see model, mill, QC, design, articulate, stain and glaze. There are a lot of different things. And you can customize it. You can come up with your own. We do have some starting points for you. If you think you'd like to use those, we can load those in when you get set up. So these activities, if I were to go into milling, for instance, you'll notice that in milling, I've got I have authorized employees who can do this task. So I've got myself in there right now. And then I have production options. So production options means there's two different ways I could do this. I've got just the good old mill, and then I cloned it, and I called it clone of mill. And the difference between the two are how many minutes it takes, how many minutes per additional unit. I've got the cost per unit, cost per additional unit. So I can differentiate. Maybe I have two different types of mills that I'm using, and the cost structure for each of them is different. So I can start tracking what it costs me to do that. Now, you don't have to set all this up. If you don't want to track that cost, that's fine. You can just set up your activities and set up your default production option for that activity, and you'll use that to construct your workflows. Finally, I've got the SOPs and work instructions. I can create work instructions for this particular activity, and also the SOP. And the SOP is really just an instruction that I can come in here and build my standard operating procedure for, and that becomes part of your lab's primary SOP for how you do things. And we do have an effective date. We have an approval process for this, so it has to be approved and by a person with approval authority. All right, so the activities we talked about. Now let's see how you use those activities. You use them to set up these workflows. So a workflow, we'll take zirconia crown for instance. The workflow looks like this. It's unpack, schedule, pour model, scan, design, mill, center, contour, stain and glaze, and polish. So that's the workflow. To the left of each of these, I have the day that I expect it to occur on. This is all relative to the day it comes in. So day 0 would be the day it was entered. Then once you set up the workflow, you're going to specify the products that use this workflow. So I've got all my zirconia crowns listed here. It's important to point out that a product can be in more than one workflow. So if you wanted to set up an alternate workflow for these zirconia crowns, maybe you're going to outsource them or you're going to use a partner lab to take some overflow, you could do that. And then you could track all the cases that are supposed to come back to you using a calendar. So we've got this nice calendar that you can come in here and you can choose your activity from the workflow. And let's say if I've got QC, do I have anything? No, it doesn't look like I have anything on the books right now, but you would be able to use this this activity workflow to, this activity calendar to see what's due back, and you can see the orders at the bottom of the page here, and when they're due and when they're supposed to come back from that that step. So if you were outsourcing, this would be a good way to do that. All right, so let's go back to workflows. Quick thing to point out here, we do have a clone workflow process. So if you wanted to create a workflow and then clone it, make some tweaks to it, and then you'd have two workflows. So All right, so let's talk about order entry. This is what people are probably most interested in, is how does it look to enter a case? Well, I've clicked on order entry and I've got a listing of all my cases that are in the lab. I can search this. I can search this several ways. I could type in part of the name of the doctor, and that's going to search for Anna Camerati. I could type in the account. That's going to search for everything related to brick dentistry. Then I could start adding things. I could say brick dentistry plus Andy, and that's going to search for all the combinations of brick plus Andy. If I had a shade, I could add that in, and it would filter it down to the matching on the shade, the patient, and the doctor, or the account in this case. So that's kind of a cool way to find these cases quickly, and you'll notice that the colors correspond to whether they have been invoiced, whether they're ordered, or just in production. The difference in ordered and in production means it's been scheduled, so it has a schedule attached to it. So if I click on Create New, I'm going to get this order entry screen, and I'm just going to zoom through order entry, see how quick this can be done. I'm just going to type in some information, put the reference number for the patient, PAN number, shade, due date. And I can use my keyboard for all this, which is nice. Not have to reach for a mouse is really helpful. So I'm going to add a product. I'm going to type ZIR, so I'm going to get my zirconia Imagine. That price is a little low, but that's okay. I'm going to hit save, and the default workflow for this was zirconia crown. So what it's doing now is it's calculating the schedule and the milestones for that case, and you'll notice that it's going to pop up here with unpack schedules being done today because it came in at 6:44 a.m. Pour model will be due tomorrow. Scan, design, you see all the steps get built for you. If there were any preferences on the doctor, those would come in here. I can look at the schedule detail. I can see one is zirconia Imagine using the zirconia crown workflow. If I wanted to manually edit the schedule, I could come in and do that here. Change the dates. If you have multiple workflows or multiple stages of production, like it starts and then it goes out and comes back, like in a lot of removable cases, you'll have previous workflows that were used listed here under previous workflows. Materials, you can add materials to the case, including the lot number, manufacturer, and again, this will link to our supply chain module to relieve inventory, track lot numbers, and calculate the cost of that particular item on the case. Shipping, we are integrating with UPS, so you can actually ship your order, print the label. We will add a FedEx integration this year, but we started with UPS. It seems to be a very popular option, and you can actually track the order from this screen as well. Files, any files that come in via email or of course through the web portal or through the mobile app will be visible here. If I wanted to add a file, I would just drag it into this space and it would get uploaded. Any files, PDFs, Word docs, STL files, it doesn't matter. We don't charge extra for the storage at this point. It seems like storage is really the cheapest part of this equation, so we're not in the business of charging for that. Notes, you want to add a note on the case, you can type it in here. This will stay with the case indefinitely. It won't be visible by the doctor's office, so it's all really internal. And then you have history. So the history on this case will capture things like when it was created, when it was invoiced, if it was uninvoiced, if someone changed a product on the case, that will be captured. And then we have a messaging interface which allows you to communicate with the accounts in real time, really. So I could actually chat using the mobile app with the accounts who are you're working with. So that's case entry. It's very fast. We really want to keep your hands on the keyboard the entire time. We've learned over the years that if you ask people to reach for the mouse, it's going to slow them down, especially people who are used to using, just quickly entering cases and scheduling them. Under our help file here, we've got several shortcuts, like how do I get to the different tabs, how do I jump to different fields. We have a little video on order entry here you can watch. So that's the basics of order entry. Now, I want to bounce out to the Launchpad. So let's look up this case. So this is case number 1270. So let's go out to the Launchpad for a minute. I'm going to log in as a technician through the employee interface. And the employee interface is designed to sit on a tablet or a laptop out in the lab and let the employees choose who they are. So I can come in and just type my name or scan my name in with a barcode and validate myself with a PIN. So it says, okay, you're Andy, you've just validated. I can see how many units I've completed a day. There is a time clock built in, so if you wanted to track time through here, you can do that. But what I want to do is I'm going to look up that order we just entered and scheduled. All right. There we go. Had the wrong one there. So we've got the order here for Dr. Camerati, Brick Dentistry. We have the phone numbers, any notes and preferences that were added, any files that were added to the case will be visible here. But what I want to do is I'm Andy, and I'm going to tell the system that I have completed the model work. I'm just going to come in and click complete activity, and now that's done. I could also say I've done the scanning on it, and all of this information is being stored in the software now. If I ever want to go back and look at, at who did this, it will be visible there. So that's our employee interface. When they're done with what they want to do, they can just click log out, and then it goes back to this default screen, waiting for the next employee to walk up and scan work or look up a case or enter a note. We have done some things with labs who want to give certain technicians the ability to change products on a case. Now I realize that's not for everyone, but in a lot of removable departments, adding teeth to the case at this level is probably something some of your technicians could do. That way it doesn't have to be done at billing when the case comes up to go out. So I'm going to go back to the Launchpad. I just type in my password. The reason we do this is this screen is meant to stay running for technicians to access. If they were able to get back to the Launchpad, or to do that, they have to enter in their password or the login password and then leave this screen. So once it says, yeah, that you're who you say you are, now I can go back and go back to the Launchpad and then go back into order management and keep, do what I needed to do there. Okay, I was going to try to keep this little demo under 30 minutes, so I've got about 3 minutes left. I'm sure there are tons of questions, things I didn't cover. In the last 3 minutes, I'll just point out that we have several areas of insight. We've got production insight, like units in, QC lot number, or QC record report, lot numbers. We have sales, product analysis, sales ranking, sales by department. Profit report, sales forecast. There's just a lot that we do. We do a retention analysis that looks at how many units the doctors are sending in week by week or month by month, and just gives you some retention information. We've written a lot of reports around sales, units, invoice register, product, just a lot that we've done here. And we're constantly writing reports. If you come up with a report idea, what we encourage you to do is, click on this little smiley face here. It allows us to give, you can take a screenshot, give us feedback. If you have an idea for a report, you can send that. If you have a problem, you can certainly submit it this way, or you can call us. I mean, we have a phone support available from 8 a.m. East Coast until 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we do have several ways you can contact us. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up now. I want to, again, thank you for your time and for viewing this video. I hope you found it informative. I hope you see that this is a very easy system to set up and use. We can get you up and running in several days as opposed to several months or weeks like it used to take. It really is an easy system to learn and operate. All right, thank you again.